Thank you, and hello everyone. I'm going to present some of the results of the work I did together with Ivan Zelgov here in the audience, and I'm going to focus on the effects that societal inequality can have on incidences of electoral fraud. And we think that a focus on inequality is very important because, as we know, actually the gap between rich people and poor people is increasing as the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the world are increasing sharply their share of the overall income in the world. Also, we know that from previous research that historically politics was shaped largely by political elites who come from a common social background, for example, common religion, language, caste. And we engage in this debate about how societal structure affects democracy by looking at one specific aspect of democracy, which is elections. And we argue that while social and economic inequality matters, a key factor in explaining the occurrence of electoral fraud is actually the distribution of political power. So our argument is that if material capital and social status are translated into political power distribution, then this inequality can have immense effects on political processes such as elections. So why is that? Well, we think that this disproportionality in the power raises the stakes of the electoral game. So one electoral defeat can lead to massive changes in the power distribution, and this is why we think that both competitors from the government and from the opposition will have higher incentives to use all means possible, including fraud. And we say that in an extreme situation where one group has monopolized political power, then that group will be afraid of redistribution in case that more groups are included in political power. And secondly, this group will also have more capacity actually to manipulate elections, for example, by manipulating the electoral management body or the media. And in the same time, marginalized groups, we think, will also have higher incentive to use all means possible in order to defend their interests better and be represented. So how do we test this relationship? We use the V-Dem data and we create our own measure of fraud in which we unite a few measures of different strategies of fraud, among which is election vote buying and government intimidation. And we look at how does power distributed by social group and power distributed by economic position affect these instances of electoral fraud. And we introduce some controls that we think might be important for the relationship, like Gini coefficient, for example. And again, we use a time series cross-sectional analysis. And what we find is that across the different model specifications that we use is that the distribution of power by social group matters, not by economic group, and this is a significant predictor of electoral fraud. And here we have one graph that helps us visualize this effect. Here we have the instances of electoral fraud where higher value means more fraud, and power distributed by social group where a higher value means more equal distribution. And what we find is that the instances of electoral fraud decrease as the power distribution gets more equal on average. And thus, at the highest level of the explanatory variable, we find that which stands for that social groups distinctions are not relevant for politics, then we see that the overall quality of the elections is actually very high. After that, we look into something different. We want to see whether electoral institutions matter for our relationship. So what we do then is we plot this effect that we have found that is significant of social inequality on electoral fraud, and we plot it by the electoral system. And what we find is that an electoral system, like majoritarian system, which puts us into a situation where the winner takes all, our relationship or the effect of social inequality on fraud is bigger, whereas in PR system, where it's more, the system is more inclusive, then this relationship is weaker. So the essential inference from this analysis is that indeed equality matters for democracy and for the specific strategies that electoral competitors engage, but we find that this effect is really corrosive for elections when the underlying differences in societies are translated into political power. And this is because this creates a polarized society in which competitors are ready to even break the norms in order to defend their interests better. And therefore, we find that attempts to democratize institutionally can be undermined by the conflicting interests that groups can have if they are not presented equally. Thank you.